Hi everyone, I'm Megan, and today I'll be sharing my literature review development journey in this course. My research focused on perception and attribution in organizational decision making, specifically how employees interpret leadership decisions at the individual, group, and organizational levels. At the start of the term, I felt comfortable with academic writing, but I quickly realized I was stronger at summarizing research than synthesizing it. The course pushed me to move beyond listing studies, instead, build an integrated scholarly argument. I'll briefly walk through where I started, how my writing evolved throughout the weekly structure, and what I learned about synthesizing research with more analytical discipline. I'll also connect the literature to my professional environment in the utilities and infrastructure industry, where decision making is complex and highly regulated. At the beginning of this class, I would say my comfort level with literature reviews was moderate but not fully confident. I've written academic papers before, but my tendency was to summarize articles rather than to truly synthesize them. I understood how to find sources and cite them, but I wasn't fully comfortable in integrating the studies into one cohesive scholarly conversation. I also underestimated how much structure and intentional design goes into a strong literature review. I thought it was more about demonstrating knowledge than constructing an argument through research. The development process in this class was honestly more structured than I expected, but that turned out to be helpful. In week one, I focused on defining my research question around perception and attribution and their impact on organizational decision making. That step forced me to narrow my thinking and stop being too broad. In weeks 2 through 4, working through annotated bibliographies and theme identification helped me move more from article summaries to pattern recognition. I started seeing common threads across the literature, especially around attribution processes, fairness perceptions, and decision acceptance. By weeks 5 and 6, the biggest shift for me was learning how to synthesize instead of stack sources. I had to intentionally integrate authors in the same paragraph, combine findings, and identify themes across individual, group, and organizational levels. What helped the most was the incremental structure. Each week built on the previous one. I wasn't just writing a paper at the end, I was developing it intentionally. The emphasis on citation density and synthesis pushed me to slow down and read more carefully. Instead of pulling quotes, I had to understand what each study actually contributed conceptually. The feedback around making sure claims were supported and avoided generalizations strengthened my academic discipline, in my opinion. If I were to change anything, I would spend more time earlier in the process mapping themes visually. Once I started grouping articles by conceptual themes instead of by author, the writing became much easier. I also realized that drafting in layers works better for me. First the outline, then integrate citations, then refine the voice. Trying to perfect everything all at once slowed me down initially, so I appreciated this process and will likely continue using it going forward, whether I need to or not. My focus on perception and attribution in decision making, especially in regulated project driven environments. The biggest takeaway from the literature is that employees rarely respond to decisions themselves, they respond to what they believe those decisions represent. Supportive attributions increase engagement. Control oriented attributions increase compliance, but not commitment. At the group and organizational levels, perception influences credibility, ownership, and the long term performance. The literature reinforced that perception is not a soft variable, it directly impacts trust, execution quality, and performance. In my industry, we constantly make decisions involving trade offs amongst cost, schedule, safety, regulatory compliance. The research helped me recognize that technical correctness is not enough. If decisions are not framed clearly and perceived as fair and intentional, then execution suffers. So, how decisions are explained determines whether teams escalate risks early or remain silent. From a governance standpoint, attribution processes influence whether leadership is seen as proactive decision makers or reactive role followers. This has changed how I think about leadership in regulated environments. Structure matters, but interpretation determines performance. Overall, this course strengthened how I approach scholarly writing. I shifted from summarizing research to intentionally synthesizing it and became more disciplined about supporting every claim with literature. More importantly, the research reinforced that perception and attribution are not abstract concepts. In my professional environment, they directly influence trust, engagement, and execution quality. The biggest takeaway for me was that while structure matters in organizations, interpretation ultimately shapes performance. Thank you.